Hey Fight fans, I'm Sarah Davis and welcome to Fight News Now Extra. I hope you all had a great long weekend. We are back to bring you some of the latest news and interviews in the combat world. And in just a few moments, we'll be joined by John Pollock and Jon Ramdien. First up, we're getting started with what's making headlines in MMA right now. And you can bet Jon Bones Jones hasn't shied from the spotlight. So this last Saturday night may have left a sour taste in your mouth after we were all looking forward to watching UFC 151, which is now the card that never was. Jon Bones Jones took a lot of the blame from fans and the UFC for the cancellation of the event, and now he's finally responding.
I just really felt hurt by Dana. Yes, I did get a DWI. Outside of that situation, I've tried my best, my absolute best, to be a person who's extremely nice to all the fans. I've tried, the campaigns for getting MMA legalized in New York State. I do everything they ask me to do. I really do. And, it really hurt, man. It hurt to be on that different spectrum, to be compared to Tito Ortiz.
And say it ain't so, UFC featherweight champion Jose Aldo was in a motorcycle accident over the weekend when he was hit by another car in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Not to worry though, like a champ, he walked away from the accident unscathed and will still fight in October. A look at heavyweights. Frank Mir will be the first UFC fighter to cross over to Strikeforce for a match. Usually it's the other way around. It's been announced that he'll face Strikeforce's undefeated heavyweight champion, Daniel Cormier, on November 3rd in Oklahoma City. So that's the latest from the MMA world. Now it's time to throw it over to our guys, John Pollock and Jon Ramdien, to hear what they have to say about all of this. Pollock, what do you think of Jones' comments on Dana White?
Well, it was certainly interesting, John. Jon Jones finally speaking publicly for the first time since this whole UFC 151 incident went down. And interesting that he took this long to reply. Did you think that was a positive, John? Because I think it only built up a lot more ill will amongst people. And quite frankly, after listening to 40 minutes of Jon Jones here, I'm still not on the side of understanding this decision fully and what the positives versus the negatives.
I have to agree with the champion. You know what? If he had to come out with a statement, everybody would have jumped on him if he said the wrong things. You got to take the time. You got to make sure your statement is well planned out so that if anybody does try to respond, that you have the necessary response to their response.
It really did have a tone of it with Jon Jones within this interview. One very much of even going so far as to say he's considering ending his relationship with his fans, perhaps leaving Twitter and breaking off that relationship with the audience. It seemed that Jon Jones, he's very much taking this role that he's fine with this decision. He is fine that this event was canceled. And to me, it didn't win him a lot of fans over. And I almost wonder if this is a purposeful move from his management.
You have to go with the flow. The fact is, people say they hate Jon Jones, and he says, well, he doesn't care because he's not here to be loved. He is here to be dominant, and you can't argue with what we've seen from Jon Jones, taking out Machida, taking out Rampage, taking out Shogun, and defeating Rashad Evans, a number of former champions. Jon Jones, the way he keeps fans or gets people excited to keep doing what you're doing. Don't care what the fans have to say, because at the end of the day, they're not the ones protecting your title. You are.
This was also, I think, a smart move to at least speak publicly before all of the media craziness leading into UFC 152, where he's going to be asked these questions ad nauseum and even bringing up the DWI from this past May.
Of course, you just have to be prepared. You know exactly what's going to be said. People are going to bring that up. They're going to bring up the fact that you're blaming Dan Henderson, that you didn't want to fight Chael Sonnen, of course the DUI, his battle with his fans on Twitter, as well as some of the other fighters. He said he was going to pay a number of the fighters' salaries, but because of their comments, he said, it's off the table. I don't care. The most important thing, I protect myself, and he should do that.
What a dick, though.
Well, whatever. What do you mean?
I'm going to pay you back. No, I'm not going to.
They had their comments. Because he was going to, and then they had their comments, and he said, you know what? I was going to be a bigger man. I don't have to do this. I was going to. You have your comments. It's off the table.
That's a 12-year-old's response to this. Oh, I'm going to do this.
He's
No,
24.
I don't like the way you're talking to me. This guy sounded like a 12-year-old at the end of the day. Then he goes out and calls Dan Henderson an old man who is a one-trick pony. A one-trick pony here. And now we're going to take on Vitor
Do you disagree
Belfort.
with that? How is Dan Henderson going to win this fight? He's going to submit him?
Dan Henderson?
How does he win his fights? One way. He knocks guys out. That's the way
He
with
knocks
his big
guys
right
out,
hand.
but I think you're also underestimating his wrestling base. That was a key reason of why he didn't take this fight. He didn't blow out his right hand. He blew out his knee,
Well,
which
that's
was
a
going
part
to be a
of it.
huge part of his takedown defense.
Well, I mean, Jon Jones, the guy is skilled. Right now, everybody is attacking Jon Jones. So he has to put up some sort of defense. And if he can deflect the anger and the hate towards Dan Henderson, he's going to do his best. And you can't blame him.
I think, listen, if you want to be the bad guy, go for it. I think that's a better role for him at this
agree.
point, where people maybe will tune in more now to see him lose versus this other image that they had been trying to project of the can do no wrong Christian that I think turned people off. And then when the DWI occurred, you couple it with all the UFC 151, there's a lot of bad negativity attached to him right now. Ride that wave.
I agree. Take the mic, talk some smack, throw the mic down, walk out, insult the whole crowd. Jon Jones will be a huge star.
All right, let's move over. Jose Aldo Jr. involved in a motorcycle accident this past weekend. Not in bad shape, though, where this will affect the October 13th fight with Frankie Edgar.
According to
Close call.
according to him, he says he's going right back to the gym. It was a minor accident, and I really think the UFC needs to bring in some sort of rule, just like other major sports leagues. They have to come in, say, these are a list of things that you're not allowed to do because, look, this is a huge fight. What happens if he did injure himself and he was forced to pull out of this fight with Frankie Edgar? I think that,
You send out a press release and you say Jose Aldo Jr. murdered the UFC 153 card. That's what you do if you can't make it.
Yeah, I guess that.
Motorcycle. What a reckless activity to be taking.
That's just very true. I had a chance to talk to Ricardo, my broadcast partner from the Best of ADCC, and he said motorcycle travel is kind of the way of travel there in Brazil. It's just easier to get around. But I think with Jose Aldo, has a couple of dollars. I think the smart thing, ditch the bike, get a car. He doesn't have to be driving a Lexus if he doesn't. I'm sure he can drive a Lexus, but he can get himself a nice Hyundai and be safe.
Another man who does not have a great history with motorcycles is Frank Mir, who will be in action November the 3rd, taking on Daniel Cormier. Oklahoma City, here where Daniel Cormier went to university. Daniel Cormier clearly going to be a huge favorite, I think, going into this fight. But now they have the lockdown date of November the 3rd.
Yeah, I love this fight. Dan Cormier the wrestler, and I think Frank Mir is in deep. Of course, this guy has faced the best in the business. So if anybody can pull through, persevere, it's Frank Mir, and I know fans are going to love this fight.
Is this a crossroads fight for Frank Mir? Because a loss here, you have to question Frank Mir's viability at this stage of the game. Because this is really his role right now, where he is, for Daniel Cormier, it's a big name for Cormier to beat, but you have to wonder how much of a future Frank Mir has outside of some interesting fights here and there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of interesting fights. I think Dan Cormier is just a legit guy. I think a win over Frank Mir catapults him probably in the top 10, if not top 5. And I think Frank Mir has tons of fights left, and he's a big name for a reason.
Daniel Cormier, Frank Mir, they will collide on November the 3rd, Oklahoma City in heavyweight action, along with Luke Rockhold against Lorenz Larkin for the middleweight title.
Thanks, guys. So now we know how Jon Jones feels about Dana White. Jose Aldo is still superhuman, and there's a big heavyweight bout to be excited for. Frank Mir and Daniel Cormier in November. That does it for us. Now make sure you tune in to Fight News Now, the MMA edition, this Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, because that's when I'll finally reveal the superhero I transformed into for a day at Fan Expo Canada. Also, don't forget to visit our website, fightnetwork.com, where you can catch up on more news and join our fantasy pool. Stay tuned because we have more Fight News Now Extra coming up after the break.